My name is Christine Alexiou. I live in Markham, Ontario, and I'm a quilt artist, and I like to paint on fabric with fabric paints. My quilts are usually whole cloth quilts, and for those of you who don't know what a whole cloth quilt is, it's a quilt that's one piece of fabric. There's no piecing involved. You don't make any blocks to join together. It's just a piece of art that's embellished in some way and then stitched afterwards. It's layered like a regular quilt, only it's made up of one piece of fabric. I will begin by talking a little bit about fabric paints. They're specially formulated paints that go onto fabric, and they stay soft and pliable when you use them. Otherwise, if you use regular acrylic paint, it gets stiff. And you don't want that because you want to be stitching through it and you want it to stay nice and supple. So these fabrics come in two formulations. You have opaque and transparent. I like to use the opaque because they cover very nicely, and you can paint on a dark background like this here, or you can paint on a light background. You get really good coverage. They come in a variety of colors, and they're very, very easy to use. So I will begin by demonstrating. I like to use 100% cotton. I start with white cotton that I've washed and ironed, and that just helps the paint take better onto the fabric. Now, a little trick I learned a while ago was to iron a piece of freezer paper onto the back, and that helps to stabilize it, and it makes it much easier to paint on. Another thing you need to do is put it onto a flat surface and secure it somehow, either using pins, if the surface will take pins, or you can use tape. And if the fabric stays secure, it won't buckle as you're painting. It makes it a lot easier for you. I begin by painting in a dark background. It doesn't have to be dark, it can be a light color, but I find that the stark white is just too stark. I like to have a nice color in the background. Plus it looks more painterly because you can see the brush strokes. I don't go for a very smooth, even color in the background. I like to break it up by using different brush strokes and having them showing. And then once that's dry, I'm ready to start painting my motif. I usually work from a pattern of some sort, but if I don't have a pattern, I'll just go in and draw straight with a piece of chalk, just like that. And the surface takes the chalk really well. And then it just brushes off, it just disappears. So it's really perfect for this application. Once I've got my motif down, I'm ready to paint. I like to have a variety of paintbrushes on hand, some big, some small. I try to match the size of the brush to the area I'm painting. If my brush is too small, it takes forever to fill the space. If it's too big, you can't get in and do details, so you need a variety. These paints are water soluble, so you can thin them with water. It makes them very easy to use. And once they're heat set, they're permanent, so you can wash them, no problem. They don't wash out. So you just take a little bit of water. You can mix the colors, they work really well. And then you just go in and fill the space. If you find the colors a little too dark, just lighten it a little bit. I've got a highlight in this area. The light's catching this area, so I'm going to do it lighter. And you can see how quickly it paints up. It really takes no time at all. What you want to do is think about where your light source is and where your shadows are, and then you mix your colors accordingly. It's nice to blend the colors. I like to let a little bit of the background color show through as I'm painting. It just gives it a slightly more painterly effect, as I like to call it. But it's entirely up to you. You can make it a solid color. If you put too much water in the paint, it will thin it a bit too much and it might look a little transparent. You may want that, but if you don't, then just make sure you don't put too much water in your paint. And you just continue on until you get it to the point where you want it. Keep in mind that you can actually add more color later on when you're stitching and you're quilting the piece, so you don't have to add all your color at this stage. You can treat this as a base. And if you're not a quilter, this is certainly a good way to do creative embroidery too, because you can hand stitch this quite easily. So there's all sorts of possibilities. And then you just keep working until you've got the whole area filled in. And you can see I'm not changing brushes. If I were doing something that was a little more detailed, for example, the quilt that's over here, I obviously use smaller brushes because I wanted to do the eyelashes and details like that. But for something like this, it's a really good beginner project because it's small and it's very simple, basic shapes. If you are a beginner, I recommend that you work small until you get a feel for the paint and how they react to the fabric. It's very forgiving because if you make a mistake, you can't really make a mistake, but if you do, you can go back in and cover it up quite easily because they are opaque. They will cover what you've done already, so you don't have to worry too much. So from that perspective, it's a wonderful thing because when you're a beginner, you're bound to do a few things that you aren't happy with. So before we go, I'd like to show you some finished pieces that I've done this way. This one here appeared in a needle pulling thread. It was a project for this magazine, which is a Canadian magazine. This one is a long part of that same series, which is what I was painting here. And this is a bigger piece. Thank you for watching, and please check in on our website and see what classes are available. I'm teaching this class at the Creative Festival in the fall.